Just ahead of Diwali, the government has announced the third leg of the economic stimulus. Joining us now to talk about that is the Principal Economic Advisor, Mr. Sanjeev Sanyal. Sir, appreciate you taking your time out and speaking with us today at ET. Now, of course, coming in just ahead of Diwali, one can call it a Diwali bonanza, if I may. Having said that, what is the kind of impact that you foresee today's announcements will have on the economy? Of course, coming in at a time when the RBI just yesterday said that from the third quarter, we can see growth coming back in the positive territory. In terms of timing, in terms of impact, help us understand what is this going to mean for the economy?
So this is broadly in line with what we have been saying throughout, which is that clearly the economy during the lockdown was squeezed very hard. Then we began to unlock it. As we have unlocked it, we have seen each sector that we unlock, the demand comes and activity comes back. So that is basically what we saw August, some activity come back, September a lot more, and then October numbers have been reasonably good. Even the very early numbers for November are reasonably good. However, there is a need to keep this momentum going. And as we kept saying earlier, there was no point in providing that momentum, i.e. pressing the accelerator when we had the foot on the brake. Now, since the foot has been taken off the brake, so consequently, we are now gradually revving up the machine, so to speak. So this is part of that exercise. So yes, the momentum is now already in our favor, but there is a case for giving it that extra push. And we have decided to give it through a precise intervention. It's not a generic intervention. The interventions announced today are very precise. What is their aim? The aim is essentially to give the private sector a little bit of a nudge in order to get them to hire again and invest again. And we have provided them, therefore, for those who are still facing difficulty on credit, support on the credit front, those who want to hire, some help on the hiring front, and of course, giving some direction to the areas where we can compete internationally.
Right. Having said that, if you see a large part of today's announcements are focused on employment generation, are focused on infrastructure sector, the housing sector as well. I just want to understand from you, we've gone ahead and provided additional outlay for the housing sector, for infrastructure related announcements as well. So far, the budget, the last budget had a spending of close to 30 lakh crore rupees. Can we expect higher than 30 lakh crore rupees spending given the new announcements that have been made?
So obviously many of the, for example, the production linked incentives and so on are additional amounts. So there is no doubt that we are saying additional amounts. And by the way, many of them will flow into the next financial year as well. So this is not just a one-time injection. This is a process that will play itself out over a period of time. Some of this is an extension of many schemes that we had already in place. We're extending out the dates. For example, the credit guarantee effort. But the main thing to understand out of this is that we are not looking at this some sort of a one-time injection to get, let's say, consumers going again or something like that. What we are trying to do is something somewhat different. We already have some momentum in our favor, and we are putting in place a sort of a demand effort, a fiscal effort to keep the momentum going into next year and keep accelerating. And in here, there is embedded certain ideas about particularly the private sector investing again, hiring again, and whatever sort of smoothening they need in order to do that in terms of the PLI scheme, in terms of credit guarantees that were already in place, but extending them and so on. So idea is to sort of take advantage of the momentum and sort of ramp it up.
You have, spoken to us in the past as well, and you've said that funds will not be a constraint as far as infrastructure sector goes. Given the fact that, this cannot be a one-year commitment, can we also expect higher infrastructure funding to be one of the bedrocks of what the government is going to do in the future as well?
Absolutely. When we say that we are going to use infrastructure spending, or even for that matter, some of these incentive linked guarantees and so on, you clearly can't say, oh, we're going to do it for the next 6 months, I'm going to switch it off. I mean, you're committing to producing a certain asset at the end of it. Similarly, you are committing to supporting the private sector to become competitive as certain sectors. So it has to be sort of a commitment for a period of time, and that is absolutely true. We are committing to a investment-led recovery through this process, and it is not just about the now or even the next few months. We are committing to it over a period of several years, in fact.
Oh, absolutely. Having said that, the world at this point of time is, awaiting a vaccine for coronavirus as well. In fact, today's package also has earmarked some amount of funds for R&D for COVID-19 vaccine as well. Given the fact that we heard from Pfizer day before yesterday, that has led to a lot of euphoria in the global markets as well. I want to understand from you as to what is the government's thought on a COVID vaccine, the kind of fund allocation that we will see for COVID-19 related vaccine. And of course, the big concern that's also coming in on the infrastructure fund, that some of these vaccines that are being talked about needs to be stored at a very low temperature of close to -70 to -80 degrees. We don't really have that kind of infrastructure. So what is the thought within Finance Ministry, within the government, on the COVID vaccine and the necessary paraphernalia that will be required along with the vaccine so that it can be transported, it can be made available?
So let me stop you right there. I really am not the right person to give you details on this. I understand it in a very general terms. All I will say, as the Expenditure Secretary had said earlier, all resources needed for this will be provided. I have no way of judging which vaccine will work and at what temperature they will work. Well, I'll just assume that the Health Ministry knows the answers to your questions, and it may be best directed to them. From finance, all I can say is whatever resources are needed to obviously take care of these requirements will be provided.
I also want to get a sense from you in terms of employment generation as well. Apart from the additional outlay that has been made of close to 10,000 crore rupees for PM Garib Rozgar Yojana as well, Garib Kalyan Rozgar Yojana as well, a new scheme that has been focused on ensuring that some of the people who lost their jobs during the COVID-19 related time, they can be hired back, and a subsidy will be provided by the central government. What kind of impact do you foresee that this is going to have at a time when the recovery is still very nascent?
Well, I mean, obviously we have some momentum, but you are right, it is still nascent. So this is precisely the point to provide sort of an extra push. That's why I keep coming back to the point about timing. Timing was important. Providing this, say, 6 months ago was no use. We were in lockdown. But now as we come out, this is the time to provide that extra push so that, one, new people can be hired, and two, people who may have lost their job for reasons totally nothing they had no control over, they are able to be brought back into the workforce. And very important part of this, please notice, is that the underlying theme of formalization. This is all being done through the EPFO framework, which is effectively basically formalizing the workforce. So two things are being done here. One is incentivizing people to create more jobs. Just when things are getting momentum, give it that extra push, and do it through a formalized system so that many other things also fall in place, worker safety, all these other kinds of rules, regulations. A formal system is able to deal with many things much better. So we're trying to attempt to do both of them.
You in the past have also said that sectors such as hospitality, tourism need special love and care. Today's set of announcements, we have seen the ECLGS being, the scope of ECLGS being widened to some of the stressed sectors as well. Do you think that is going to be enough? Because a lot of the pain is still there for a lot of these services sector. And even as we said that, the recovery is still nascent, can we expect some more support for these sectors, maybe at a later stage?
Well, we'll watch what happens. I mean, clearly, there are travel and hospitality related sector has been specially hurt. But you can imagine it's very difficult to provide support for it in a situation when, it's not like, you can give them a GST cut or something like that. I mean, I get suggestions like that. But, how many people are not going on a holiday because of GST? So, or going to a restaurant because of GST. So that's no use providing that kind of support. What you really need is to get people to spend again in those sectors. And that will only happen really when we are out of the COVID cycle. But meanwhile, we would like to keep these sectors alive in whatever support we can provide. And you just mentioned one way in which it can be done, providing credit support of various kinds or even employment support, and basically keep them alive to the other side of the sector of the cycle, so that as things accelerate, we can provide, then again in that sector too, we can provide them some extra push if necessary.
Just about 2.5 months to go, sir, for the upcoming union budget as well. And this is going to be a very different time because we're going to come out of this whole COVID-19 pandemic as well. The next set of announcements only in the budget or maybe before that?
Obviously, it's not my prerogative. It is the prerogative of the Honorable Finance Minister. If necessary, we will provide more support, or we will wait till the budget. We'll see how it goes. But let me say that we in the government continue to monitor the situation very, very closely. Obviously, this has been a very tricky year in which to make policy. But I hope you will realize that we have watched this very closely. And although there were a lot of criticism about many of the things we did, I hope you will realize that now that we are coming out of it, many of these policies do make sense. For example, we were initially criticized for not going for a large demand push in April, May, and June. And many countries that did it found that the efforts really didn't bear fruit. So I hope that now that we are going into that phase, when we are already sort of got some momentum, you will find that timing will be far, far more fruitful as far as getting momentum back in the economy.
Okay, all right. On that note, appreciate you taking your time out and speaking with us today at ET Now on the third leg of the economic stimulus. Do speak with us when we hear on the fourth leg as well.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.